for joining us this evening. My name is Nate Frazee, and I am the project manager overseeing the improvements to Clarendon play area. Next. So a few housekeeping items. First, this meeting is being recorded. So be sure to share with your neighbors. It's going to be posted on the project website, which we'll have at the end of the presentation. If you would keep your mics and your videos off during the presentation itself. And then when we get to the question and answer and discussion portion at the end, we'll ask that everybody turn on their videos, and then we'll call on you so you can you can raise your hand and then you can on-mic yourself when you're called upon. Next. With that being said, we want to ensure that this conversation is a pleasant experience for all, and that our community members are comfortable sharing their comments, questions, and feedback. So please be respectful and mindful of each other's time, as we only have an hour and a half together tonight. Let's keep the questions and comments project specific and on point, and please wait until all attendees have had the opportunity to ask a question or provide a comment before asking a second one. I'm also providing my contact at the bottom here, which will also be throughout the presentation. So if there's additional conversations or issues that need to be addressed, you can certainly feel free to reach out to me directly. Next. So I think we're all Zoom pros by now, but just to go through a couple quick tips and reminders. As I mentioned, we're asking that you keep your cameras and your microphones turned off during the presentation portion, but that you turn them back on during the discussion. During that time, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself once called upon. If there's additional there is additional prompts that if you want that indicate yes or no. If you're calling in tonight, which I think that we did see a phone call in, you'll need to dial *9 to raise your hand, and then we can unmute you. Also, if you have a question during the presentation, feel free to add that to the chat so we can make sure to answer those during the discussion time. We'll do our best to actually answer them throughout the presentation, but in terms of keeping the flow going, some of those may be saved until the end. Please keep that chat comment questions related to the project. During the discussion, as I mentioned, we're going to want to keep the video turned back on though. All right, with all the housekeeping items, I'm going to turn back. So the next. So tonight's agenda is introduction of the project team and background, site analysis and what we've heard, overall considerations, presentation of the preferred plan. We're going to do listening and discussion, and then we're going to have closing remarks and next steps. Next. As I said, my name is Nathan Frazee from the project manager from the Parks Department. From my department is Christine Brandeo, our outreach coordinator. She's an excellent contact for the Friends groups, as well as any other Friends related activities. I also have Shanice from the Office of Neighborhood Resources. So if there's any concerns that aren't park specific, but more neighborhood, she's an excellent contact for that. From our design team, Weston and Sampson, we have Sherry Ruane and Cassie Bethany. Next. So this project, here's the project schedule and the funding. We have $1.53 million. This is our third meeting. So we anticipate following this meeting that we're going to work into design development and construction documents and get ready for a fall our winter bid, and anticipate construction starting spring of 2022 with anticipated opening in the fall of 2022. Next. So there's a lot of considerations that go into park design, which include community input, such as tonight, safety and regulatory guidelines, City of Boston priorities, and Parks and Recreation goals. We went into more of these details of these in prior meetings, so certainly go back to the previous presentations. I'll also say one of the other elements of community input is working session groups, so directly working with Friends groups or the schools, as well as other city agencies such as Landmarks. We did have an advisory meeting with Landmarks in April, as well as working with the schools and the Friends group. Next. So the 5 elements of play within playground design is social, physical, cognitive, sensory, and communication. Next. Here is a lot of text on a slide. So this is a breakdown on all of those elements and examples of those. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read over all of those tonight, but this will be included in the presentation. So feel free to look at that at a later date. Next. So a little bit of history of the site. There was originally a 6-story hotel that was constructed in 1869 and eventually demolished in the 50s. In the 60s, there was a proposal for a 17-story project that the community opposed. And after a lot of outreach and campaigning from Back Bay mothers with a march directly to the mayor, the city took ownership in 1975 and opened the site as a playground in 1979. The park has gone through a few renovations since that time, but I believe we may have some of the original park advocates on this call tonight. So I just wanted to acknowledge their efforts, not only to create the park, but to continue to be active and involved throughout its life. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sherry to go over what we've heard from the next meeting.
Thanks. So we're taking a look at the site analysis diagram that we had shared with you previously. And I think, you guys are quite familiar with the existing conditions, the deciduous shrubs, screening, the granite seat wall, established trees that we really want to preserve, obviously the presence of 109 Comm Ave, and the various parts and pieces around the site. And also just wanted to say thank you so much for the very well organized and comprehensive feedback that we've been getting as it relates to a lot of these existing conditions. Completely appreciate really understanding where people are at, understanding the history of the site. All of that is incredibly useful and just want to recognize that. I think obviously as we look at this site, we are incredibly mindful of these existing mature shade trees and the important impact they have on the city and the neighborhood, and also recognize that there's a lot on the site that we want to keep on the site. But in some cases, things really do need to be adjusted or repurposed or relocated in order to create a more inclusive, equitable open space. Next. So some of the things that we heard, certainly there's a desire to have the service gate and emergency access along the alley be shifted. Also understanding that the flavor of the playground is beloved, and we totally get that. And I also recognize that, some folks are thinking, well, do we even need to update the play equipment? Well, the play equipment is old, not older than me, but old. Once it gets past 15 to 20 years, it really does stop complying with current safety regulations. Maintenance becomes a concern. It's time. As we look at open separated play at the lower level, and then as recognizing that folks want a large area for free play, that's awesome. A community bulletin board, modifying the fence, make sure, again, safety requirements are being met. And then really focusing on natural elements, ground level discovery areas, tactile play, things like that. I think another piece that is important is understanding that we're trying to create a site that really is able to serve a bunch of different ages. And that becomes especially important in the various parts and pieces that go into the redesign. And also recognizing that, this is a place, this small footprint does a lot for a lot of different people. So it has to be a multitasker as it continues to evolve. Next. So some cool stuff that the former building foundation that is now in the site there, the arrow in the center. It's an important element in the park, obviously, for the raucous games of kickball. Also knowing that this is a tight urban site and that plantings really need to be maximum strength so that they can withstand the use and also all the urban conditions that go along with it. The tree roots we're being super careful of as we look to renovate, and recognizing that stroller parking really does need to have its own place so that it doesn't block circulation. Next. And then, the fixed play surfacing, a lot of what you see is remnants of, making the site accessible and compliant, but also recognizing that the 5-bar mulch wears away at the bottom of the slide really quickly. So these are remnants of sort of ongoing operation and maintenance. And I feel like this renovation, one of the big goals is to really integrate all of that operation and maintenance into the design so that we're not getting these sort of makeshift solutions. Just again, the tree canopy, the open play. There's the learning projects etched stones, which we are mindful of, knowing that drainage is important everywhere, and that as an urban park, it is one of the few places that actually has pervious surfacing. So we want to really be smart about how we manage stormwater, and then making sure that the site is really inclusive, not just for physical inclusivity, but also developmental inclusivity. So tactile play, imaginary play, all sorts of things like that, gross motor, fine motor. Those are things that we think about all the time and want to reiterate that they're being included. Next. So you may remember from last time as we went through the different concepts, and you can see each of them had a slightly different approach really to sort of circulation and then designating the areas. And we listened to everyone's comments, and we, again, we got the emails, and we've been following up and revisiting the site. And tonight, Cassie's going to move through a couple of slides and then present a preferred scheme of just where we're at now based on the feedback we've gotten, and then listen more to your feedback, and then move on from there. So we're excited about it. And I think, Cassie, are you next? Are you the next slide? Yeah. Okay.
I am.
Great.
Thanks, Sherry.
Yep.
So I think that this has been such a great collaborative process. Like Sherry and Nate mentioned, that we've gotten really informative experience from people who have been there every day and experience it, and are some of the original people who have seen how this park has changed over time. So we're really grateful for all of the feedback, and we continue to be impressed by everybody's investment in this process. So there's a few slides here where we've tried to consolidate and synthesize some of the main tenets that we've heard and want to push forward through the preferred plan. The 4 here, the first is really about incorporating synthetic turf into the open play area that'll look and feel like real grass, but it makes for a much more sustainable play surfacing in this really dense area of the city. We'll also be looking to install poured in place rubber surfacing in the a majority of the rest of the playground. And anything that we do install will have a really natural color scheme so that fits in with the feel and aesthetic of the neighborhood. We'll also create gateways and define spaces with changes of material. In the lower left image, you'll see the use of wood in a bridge or in different play elements. We're really trying to use a few materials like wood and granite surfacing and different things like that that make it feel like it's been there forever and it's really integrated and cohesive throughout the entire space. And then we're trying to use interesting and natural pathway material that creates areas of discovery and texture. One of the big things we heard was that kids don't have a ton of places that live in the city. They don't have a ton of places to go and really feel the earth. So this is a great opportunity to really explore what that means and kind of dive into that idea and make this playground really tactile and exciting for kids of all ages. We'll also use the natural materials to build play into the elevational changes of the playground. One of the great things that the original designers and advocates for this park did was maintain that foundational wall and make use of the elevation that the former building provided. So we'd like to really continue to play into that and use things like embankment slides and ropes and posts and things like that where we can take advantage of that elevation. And then we'd also like to create play value with natural materials. Not everything needs to be a manufactured play structure. We can use logs and boulders and things to make play out of natural materials. We're also taking a look at seating, both formal and informal seating, and trying to bridge the gap between more the historic feel of Back Bay with the natural wood and boulder materials that we're introducing into the park. And then the right image is one that really inspired me personally, is using materials like wood to create delineations between space that's not just a fence or a wall, but it actually has play value to it. So this is a great example at MIT where they did just that. So I'll just dive into the preferred plan and I'll break it down. So this is the overall, and I'll just spend a few moments on this and then dive into the specific elements. There's a lot to churn through in here. And then we'll also kind of go through each play piece itself and then be able to vote on what we like. So I'll try to keep pace with all the material to get through. Just to orient you, we're looking, the page is due north, 109 Com Ave is page left on the west side, and Clarendon Street, page right on the east side. Com Ave is forming the bottom of the page itself. We're planning to keep open play where it is currently, and this plan is attempting to maximize it as much as possible. That's what we heard loud and clear, that the open play is the most valued piece. Kids don't really have a space to run and stretch their legs. So this is the place they do it. So we're trying to maximize that as much as possible. This is a bit smaller than what it is currently, and it's just really because we're trying to create an edge along 109 Com Ave that's respectful of those neighbors and tries to deter some of the kickball action and lacrosse ball throwing that happens there. We're proposing to keep the 2 to 5 play structure, or not keep, but we're proposing to actually put it where the existing swings are now and relocate the emergency and service gate into the northwestern corner. This would mean that the shed that's there now would just move. It's not going to change in any way. It would just shift over. And that will give us some more space to really build in a lot of play where the service gate is now, which is right where that spinner and that curved bench is located up at the top, northern end of the playground. We're hoping to put a large 5 to 12-year-old play structure in the northeastern corner of the playground. Along the eastern edge, a pretty big sensory play area. That's another thing we heard loud and clear, is that sensory play was something that we really wanted to expand and get as much out of as we possibly could. We'd also like to include a basket swing in that area. That's a great spot where kids can all pile onto one swing and play together. And then in the core of the playground, we're trying to be sensitive to the tree roots and things of those core trees, but make use of that hillside, like I was just mentioning, with the elevational changes of the playground. So I'll dive into break down sort of the circulation and surfacing that's happening. I think this may help clarify how you would move through the park. The main entry to the playground would stay the same, and then you would be find yourself on a concrete paved area. We would make use of bridges or wood platforms to bring you into the poured in place rubber area. And that's by and large, obviously the most space that is taking up this playground. That would largely be fixed. The only play area that wouldn't have the rubber would be the sensory play, and that's just to make sure that we can maintain that tactile feel in that space. Then we're also introducing wood decking or other wood type surfacing that kind of breaks up the space and adds that natural element in. In terms of seating, we have a mix of formal and informal. The red squiggly lines are those curved benches that you had seen previously. We're also proposing a circular bench around one of the trees right here as a great kind of meeting spot for kids. We're proposing a bank of natural seating. In the pink is actually timber, pieces of timber strung together to create stadium-esque seating, and then granite block seating, which is in a similar fashion, but the mix of the two will create a really nice texture against the open play area. And then we have several areas that are informal, either logs or steppers or granite boulders that would form edges around the playground and define the space of the playground, but also be seating opportunities for parents or caregivers or teachers who would be overseeing their kids playing around. So I have a few enlargements and then a view just to really get a feel of the space. So this is the upper area of the playground with the public alley in the back. This zone is focused on the 2 to 5, and it sort of bridges the gap with the 5 to 12-year-old play area. In this back corner, we have a structure that we'll see in greater detail in a few slides, so you'll understand the components. And I just would note that for all of these larger play structures, it's really a mix and match scenario with manufacturers. So we tell them what are the elements that we really are, we have to have on these play structures, and we can fit them to make whatever kind of shape we want. So whatever you see, I think one thing we'd love to hear, and we've heard a bit from the working group, is what are the elements that we definitely need to include. One of those was monkey bars, so we know that's definitely something that needs to be included in the 5 to 12-year-old play structure. We'd also in this area include a 2-bay swing, so we'd have 2 belts and 2 buckles for the littlest kids and little older kids. And then we'd include a spinner, which you'll see in a moment, but it's an element that we don't currently have in the playground. And then the edge, one of the design elements that we thought would be really beneficial here is trying to break up that rectangular edge of the playground. So we're trying to use different materials to form an edge around the different play spaces while still maximizing the amount of play space and the seating that's offered. So you'll see these brown lines, those are the curved seats, but then we also have fallen logs and steppers that add play value. We have boulders that won't have sharp edges, but they'll be able to be climbed on and played with. And then in the 2 to 5-year-olds area, we're including a deck that we're calling a stage. And then we can make use of timbers that we'd be incorporating throughout that can actually become a scramble. So they'd be at different levels, and little kids can prove their climbing abilities as they get older and try to get to the top. As you move down into the core of the park, this is really where you see the open play and the wooden edge along the 109 Com Ave. We're proposing a low hedge here. We've heard from the working group that there used to be planting along this edge, and so we try to pick something that wasn't going to impede the views from the windows that are on the garden level, but something that tries to kind of mitigate some of the kickball issues that they're seeing. We also really liked the amphitheater seating that's out there now, but we wanted to do it in a way that was incorporating the materials that we're proposing throughout and has more of a natural organic feel. So we're looking at different ways to arrange granite blocks and timber blocks as well to create not only seating, but ways to scramble up and down through the space. So the open play becomes an area that can be run through in a circuit more or less. We're also looking at ways to kind of soften the grove of trees that is in the middle. Right now it's um, doing really well, and there's a lot of use. Kids run through this space quite a bit, so it just takes a beating. So we're proposing here an elevated deck that would pick people up off of those tree roots and really let them breathe and get a lot of that use off of the trees. And then we were thinking that it would be helpful to introduce some planting that's protected, like bulletproof planting, that can soften this area because it is quite open um, and a bit harsh, in my opinion. And then this allows us to really build in some play along this embankment. So we would be up higher by, not too much, but maybe 3 feet. And then we can have an embankment slide here in this silver tone. We can build in some ropes and posts. We can build a little log ladder, things like that. So we can make, and handholds as well. So we can make use of this embankment in a bunch of different ways. And then in terms of sensory play, we'd like to include tables and chairs, a desk where kids can pick up buckets of mulch and play with them, fallen logs, and a play hut. And then we'll have a circular bench here with a deck as well as a meeting center spot. In the lower or more the front of the playground, here is where this will be the main kind of port entry to the playground. We'll still keep a little portico here with seating, but we wanted to create spaces where you could get down into the open play and make that connection from upper to lower level. It's about 3 feet of change. So while we'd still want to maintain the wall here, we think that we can build in some of those learning center stones to create a little stepped pathway down into that space. And I think this is a great place to also protect the trees that are here by using wood edging and so on and so forth. That really helps to create a strong edge between planting and wall and open play. We'd also like to create a little discovery trail along the front edge. It's already a desire line, so this would really create a secret spot that still is visible from the street, but is a little kind of secret zone that you can get to play a little faster in a different way. And we're imagining that this is maybe a textured floor of timbers that are set in the ground and then has edges that are logs and boulders. This area would also include a basket swing and then a bridge as well as the more formal gateway into the playground. So now hopefully that maybe made sense or didn't, but hopefully this perspective view helps a little bit. This is up in the air a bit, bird's eye view, looking in from Com Ave. So you'll see 109 Com Ave on the left in the open play. And really the intent here is to make it really fit into the space and into this neighborhood and not make it feel like it's super modern and really have elements that are already incorporated into the rest of the neighborhood and the streets that surround it. And this is a view from the public alley looking back, just to get a better sense of what the larger structures look like. These would be really tucked into the back of the neighborhood, so the Com Ave edge would be nicely planted and lush, so to create a buffer against that edge. And a lot of the active play would be happening in the back of the playground. So getting into play equipment, this is the structure that is included in the plan currently. It's a traditional post and beam structure. It can be roofless, so keep that in mind. We don't need roofs, and we can modify it so it can be more open. It was something that the school desired, just to make sure it's really visible and open throughout. We are looking at other companies, and this is another option that is offered through Compan. Again, like I had mentioned earlier, a lot of these play elements can be mixed and matched. This is just an example, but if you tell us, well, we really like this kind of climber or these rails, then those are things that we'll take back to the company and tell them to work with them to make a play structure that fits. Also, Compan can do roofless structures, just to note that. I think that was something important that we heard last time. And they typically, their posts are rounded. So that's a bigger difference between the two brands, is the kind of aesthetic feel of these structures. So I think we'll skip to a vote now. We wanted just to get a gut reaction on which structure resonated with people. I'm gonna let Christine take over.
I think it's important to note, Cassie, while we're voting, the results of the voting don't necessarily, mean, oh, okay, that's the structure. It's just simply to gauge folks that are with us today, to see where people are thinking, and just get a sense of what's popular and what's it's resonating with people.
I'm going to launch the first poll. You should pop up on your screen now.
All right, we're just going to give it a minute for everybody to pull in. All right, still some coming in.
Can folks see the results as they're happening?
I will share it once it's done. A few more seconds.
All right, we're going to close it now.
Yeah.
So if you want to get it in, vote now. All right, closed.
I'm going to share the results now.
Perfect.
Can everyone see that?
Pretty close. 60-40 for Richter is helpful data to collect. So we just have one more poll, and that's on the 2 to 5 year old play structure. So the top image and to the left side is the Richter play hut combo. The yellowy images are just models. They wouldn't look like that. They would look more like the top precedent image. But that is what is in our plan currently. And the other option is the Compan version of that, which is got that more fairy tale feeling to it. So we're going to launch another poll to gauge what people are feeling in terms of the aesthetic. And I should note that Richter only offers metal slides. So if that's a determining factor for you, that is something to vote on and comment on.
And I got a question asking if they are real wood. Yes, these are real hardwood with natural rot resistant characteristics. So the maintenance of them is not, the classic, treatment, to deter rotting. These are designed in to avoid those chemicals.
Yeah, so the Richter one is larch wood, and the Compion ones are Robinia, and they're both really hard woods. And then they also, we don't embed them in the earth. They're actually like a steel plate and a foundation so that we're not, the wood doesn't rot because it's sitting in wet soil and things like that. So there are ways to design it so that it's not as vulnerable as just regular old wood.
I'm gonna share the results now.
All right, that one's pretty clear. Thank you, everyone. Oops. So in terms of swings, the two that we included in the plan are on the left side. The two bays are the Compion swings in the top, and then we included a tire, well, not a tire, a basket swing on the bottom image. We also just wanted to offer a few other thoughts for alternatives. In terms of we can still have the bay swings, but there are a few different types of swings that we can include if people are excited by these. They have these duo swings and then the you and me swing offered through Compion. And then there's also this, Nate called it the Viking swing, which is kind of an awesome name for it. It's called the pendulum. We would obviously not color it green. We can pick any color under the sun, but this is a bit of a different way to swing that would be helpful to hear if people are interested in that. And it does fit in the plan. So we've checked kind of all the boxes in terms of layout and such. In terms of independent play pieces, the Berliner disc is the spinner that we've included in the plan. We've used this at other playgrounds. It is a really high play value piece. Kids love it and they can all pile on. And then we've also included a few kind of natural looking animal fun stepping stones throughout. There are a few there's so many different kinds of spinners out there. There's this more inclusive, not more, but this is another inclusive play spinner, this tippy carousel, and then there's these pole spinners that are called the Spica. We also have other options like a talk tube-esque type element called the Echo Game, and then different kinds of springers that Compion offers. And they have a bunch of different animals and such that we could look at that are also wood. In terms of the sensory play elements, we're including, these are all in plan. Some are play equipment pieces and others would be designed and fabricated by us. The sensory logs are one example where we can affix handholds to them. We have stepping stumps, boulders, like talked about throughout the whole playground. You can also build an open playhouse that's open throughout. So it's got an open back and an open front. That really is great for imaginative play. The Compion desk is something that can be used to pick up mulch and play with it and imagine with it. And then the table is also great for open play. And that concludes the presentation, and just to have a plan up in case folks want to speak to specific elements. And I'm happy to skip back to any image that folks have comments on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Cassie. So Cassie's going to, as she said, she's going to leave that image up there just as a reference for us to speak. So just to go over the Zoom tips one more time, now that we're at the discussion portion of the meeting, if everybody who is comfortable could turn their cameras on so we can see everybody's face and kind of simulate as much as possible a real in-person meeting. And then if you can raise your hand by clicking the little hand feature, we'll call on you as those go up. If you have called in tonight, you'll need to dial *9, and that will indicate that your hand's raised to us. Am I seeing any hands being raised? There we go. think the first one I see is Michael.
Michael, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I do have a question. It looks wonderful, and I appreciate all the good work that you've done on this. And I am struck by how different it is and how familiar it is at the same time. But it's the ways in which it's different, I think, are really very attractive. I'm wondering about the open play space, which is often used for soccer games. And at one end, the soccer ball gets stopped by the wall. At the other end, it gets stopped currently by a fence that separates the end of the play space, that alley side end, from where the swings are currently. I'm wondering what would stop. So the goals are at the opposite ends of this open play space, and I'm wondering what would stop the soccer ball being kicked into the play area that's going to be used by toddlers ages 2 to 5. That seems potentially problematic.
Yeah, I'll jump into that. I think one of the great things about this wall is that it can be built to whatever height we want it to be, and it has those holes through. So I think we'd like to make sure that it's not going to become a nuisance for that age group that's playing next door. And we'd also like to put a gate right here, which I apologize, it wasn't as clear, but I think having a gate and actually having this as a separate space that's contained will go a long way to making sure that balls aren't flying into other spaces.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the soccer ball comes up over at the opposite end, it comes up over the current wall. That's, with the children I've supervised there, that's a penalty, and they have to go sit out. But I'm just mentioning that they sometimes don't have perfect control over the height to which they kick the ball.
Yeah.
And it can go flying over that already 8-foot high wall on the Commonwealth Avenue side. So it's a safety concern for any 2 to 5-year-old who might be back in that area.
We can kind of continue to kind of work on how that edge works and try and
Yeah.
reinforce that a little bit more to ensure that that's mimicking a wall as a protector for the soccer balls.
Yeah, I do think it's a safety issue. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I see
Robert, you can
Robert.
sorry, Robert, you can unmute yourself. Did we lose Robert?
There we go. Robert, I think it shows that you're unmuted here.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. First, just by introduction, I'm one of the residents at 109 Commonwealth Ave. As a matter of fact, my unit is the garden level, so we directly abut the playground area. I just want to echo in terms of the thought process that's gone into this is very impressive. And as one who also uses the park, in terms of my grandchildren, I have a vested interest to make sure that it meets all their requirements as well. However, I do want to raise some concerns around the open space area. I fully appreciate that there's many a ferocious soccer game that takes place. You know, we see it firsthand. Our windows are sometimes used to deflect the ball. What concerns us, though, is that takes place during the school year for the most part, and during the week. But during the weekends and in other periods, you know, you have other uses. And as a playground, it's really not a play ball area. And what happens is there's a lot of hardball play. So we have people that come in with lacrosse balls that are very hard, as well as baseballs. And those, quite frankly, and not just a safety issue as it relates to the residents and potentially broken glass, but it's also a social safety issue for the children who are playing in the playground. And unfortunately, I'm not a police officer. I've had to be involved in police matters. And I know one of the discussions was to put a sign up about no hardball playing. But I was wondering, and by the way, with all due respect, I don't think that's going to work because, again, we can't self-police. I was wondering if there's any other ways besides just putting the bushes in and rocks potential of mitigating that impact. If there could be trees put in between the windows or some other consideration so that truly the residents can live there happily, and also it can be it can be safe for all ages, all children, because frankly, the most significant use of the playground is by the younger children over the weekend and in the evenings.
Yeah, that definitely can be something we incorporate, specifically trees that are more columnar, very dense, in more columnar shape, so that they don't become a nuisance to windows or blocking or damage to the building. With the buffer planter that they're kind of proposing here, that should be able to fit into that space. Cassie, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's definitely been something that we've been working through this design process, and have heard from really everybody who's weighed in that the balls against the facade of the building is a tough part, as like a con to all the great benefits that the open play offers. So it's certainly a challenge. And if somebody's on from the second floor, I'd love to hear what their input is on having trees, because I guess I don't want to block any windows by doing that, but I'm certainly in favor of doing columnar trees that are really tight if that's something that the community wants.
Mel has her hand up. You can unmute yourself, Mel.
I am concerned about the emergency exit, which will get the people coming out through it and going across the parking lot at 109. I think that corner is a poor choice of location for the emergency exit. I also think that one might consider completely reversing east and west in this park.
Okay. Thank you, Mel. Is the area where we've identified the proposed emergency service gate, is that parked in front of? Is it a parking spot, or is it?
It's beside it. So I think what some of the comments and concerns is if our gate would swing out into the parking spot, which we can certainly design it so then our gate is not doing that. And the intent of this gate, which we spoke about in previous meetings, and what we're going to be working on is that this will have like a panic bar type feature. Then it's not going to be intended to be an everyday use park. We typically try and ensure that all of our parks have two forms of entry, just to prevent as a safety concern. So that's what we're trying to explore, how that gate could be configured and developed in a way that can allow that.
I can't think of a worse spot to put the gate than in the corner that you've picked. If it opened directly into alley 424, it would make far more sense. I envision on a daily basis vehicles parked exactly where the gold triangle is.
Okay.
Okay.
That's helpful feedback. Thank you.
I see another hand up, but I got to find it.
I got it. Gonzaga, did I say it right?
Oh, there.
Good evening. Congratulations again. It's getting better and better. I don't know if you see you see me. I try to, like, from my kitchen window, show the And I exactly second what the previous person said. If you, I don't know if you're going to see, but that's exactly in the back. And you see the silver car is really parked in front of where you want to put the emergency exit. It's not going to work. Like, I'm sorry to be that negative, because everything is wonderful, and it's something new with something old. It's really congratulations, but I will urge you to like think twice about put the emergency exit on that side. Again, I'm not a neighbor. I'm on the other side of the street. I could care less where it is. It's just like it's not going to be functional. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you for that input.
Margaret?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments on this back corner, which is a problematic corner. I mean, one solution would be to square it off with fencing and put the actual gate on the alley line so that there is no chamfer on the back, because the property line is straight to the alley. So that you might look at that. And I don't know if it's the scale of the drawing, but the shed looks smaller, but you're just going to move the existing shed, right?
Correct.
Yeah, we're not gonna get a new shed or downsize it. It's the
Okay.
exact same shed that we're shifting over.
That's good. My other question is about this decking. And I know I raised this in one of the subcommittee meetings about that this is a similar thing that they're looking at in Copley Square to protect the trees. And one of the things that came up there was how high is it? What is underneath? Can you get underneath? How is it closed off? What material is it? Have you thought through any of those design elements for that particular thing yet that you can talk about?
Yeah, sure. We've done decks in the past where they are such that they can be permeable through. So you put it on a base of crushed stone, and then the deck essentially sits on top. So that's the finished grade. It'll be elevated because it currently is elevated in that area, but we imagine it in this particular application to be almost flush with the planting, such that if you imagine the seat wall that's out there now, it's like at that level. And then there'll be a layer of crushed stone, and probably we'll do some sort of structural fill or something to alleviate the tree roots and give them some more breathing room. But we haven't detailed that out yet. This is really since our last working group meeting, and we heard what you all were saying. We were studying a way to kind of relieve some of the pressures of kids running through that area and try to kind of pull people up off of that level.
So what's the edge between the deck and where the planting beds are? Are they in a raised planter, or are they at grade 2? And is there any barrier there for foot traffic?
We're showing right now some sort of protective fence that is in keeping with the ornamental fence that surrounds the playground.
Okay, that might
But
work.
we haven't detailed that out yet, and so the relationship between planting and decking would have to be refined, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Susan? Baker?
Hi, I just want to say how much I appreciate you working with and taking all the comments of the working group and really trying to incorporate them. I think it's really great, and that you are keeping the historic front wall and trying to make use of the mound is greatly appreciated. I do have just a couple of questions. I'm just wondering if you can kind of elaborate more on what's going to be going on behind that historic front wall, and how high are you proposing for that fence, or not the fence, but kind of the wooden structure along 109 Com? And are you still considering maybe having a water source out of the shed? Thank you.
I can tackle some of those, and Nate, you can jump in too, if you'd like. So you were asking about this foundation wall here?
Yes.
And this space here, where
no, kind of in back of it in the open play area. I'm kind of just wondering like what is.
Okay.
If you can
Yeah,
just
I
kind of
think-
go over that again, please.
Sure, yeah. We were thinking, I can skip to the bigger view. It's better in this view, maybe. Actually, maybe a little hard with the trees, but we're imagining that we keep that wall intact, but we kind of add to it or expand areas where we're building out the wall, so it's less kind of structured in some parts, but it still retains that kick wall element to it. Maybe it might be better to see in this enlargement.
Okay. Is it
Um,
kind of like for climbing? Is that the intent, like to get up and down from
Yeah,
seating area kind of?
I mean,
Okay.
the learning center stones, we were thinking if we do end up doing the decking, then we would pick those up and save them. And then one option would be to incorporate them onto steps that bring you up into this level. So these kind of brown lines and gray area indicates that that surface would then become learning stones, and it's like a mixture of flat stones. And then we were also, I didn't mention earlier, about talking about a community kiosk in this corner right here, just to note that. And then we were thinking about how to protect the trees that are really open right now in the open play, and making use of wood timbers and things that would actually build up that wall a little bit. And actually, it might create kind of a better kicking surface that's a little more attractive than kicking in this direction towards 109. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, I just wasn't sure how that was all gonna work. Okay.
You had
And then my
another
other question, I had a question about the wood structure that you were proposing along 109. How can you give me an idea of like how high you're proposing for that? And
Yeah. Well, we definitely would not be higher than the lowest window, so as not to impact those views. I'm imagining it's like an 18-inch high wall that can also be a seat wall. And then we would plant on top of that whatever mix of materials we ultimately end up on. Our initial idea was to do like a hedgerow along that edge, but we're hearing other thoughts on that.
okay.
And we're imagining it to be that similar to that precedent image shown at the top of the preferred plan. If I go
When you say plant on top of that, you don't mean on top of that, you mean in addition
Kind of
to
behind
that.
it.
in
Yeah.
addition to it and
Yeah, I
behind
just
it.
wanted to be clear.
Yeah, so we're thinking of it looking something like this, maybe solid in that case, and then there would be planting behind it. And then you asked about the water connection. So we can certainly add in a hose bib connection, likely by the storage shed.
Okay.
And that,
All right,
and-
great.
and
Thank
I
you.
just want to confirm that, Sue, that was what you were referencing, not an actual drinking
Correct.
fountain? Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, correct. Just a way, that maybe it could be incorporated into the shed so that it's not, everybody can't get at it automatically, but it would be there, if we wanted to use it for a special event or something.
Sure. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Although I think the teachers want water. The kids could just turn it on whenever, right? Sue, I see your hands up.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate all the thought that's going into this. It's a very challenging thing to get everybody in the same space and have it all function. And I don't envy you, Cassie, at all, trying to sort all this stuff out. But a couple of comments. My sort of overarching thing, which I will keep repeating, is that every time I go by and I live at the end of the alley, I see kids tearing around. And I hope that you can maintain enough open space so that they can continue to do that, because they don't get a lot of chance to run. And they not only run in the open play area, but they run in the back along the alley where the spinner is, and they run around the equipment, and they play tag, and they carry on. And it's quite fun to watch, but I hope it can continue. Someone asked me where the toddlers were going to be accommodated, and that I haven't seen a separate space for them. When we originally did it, we had them in the front corner because that was the sunniest area. And I don't know whether you want to consider relocating the basket swing to where the majority of the activity is, and have something small there for the toddlers, or whether you want to do something up by the wall up around on the west side front. The magnolias need replacing, and we need to keep saying that because that's got to happen. And I really feel like the mound itself is something that, if it could be left alone, I think it would be preferable to what you're showing here. The trees seem to be, they're simply gorgeous, and they seem to be doing really well. So I think we should talk with Margaret about whether just leaving well enough alone is a good thing for that particular part of the site.
And Sue, before you go on to the next point, there was a question earlier about if we were removing any trees, and I incorrectly said we are preserving all of them, but you just reminded me that at the Commonwealth side, there are a few magnolias that we would be looking at addressing those conditions. So
Yeah,
yes, thank you for, I just wanted to make sure I was
so
given the correct
they'll be
information.
replaced, right?
Correct, yes,
Yeah,
correct.
Okay. And but it's the pear trees on the mound that I'm sort of blathering about at this point. And whether this way, anyway, just to keep that the way it is, because it seems to be functioning pretty well.
Mhm.
So that is my thought. I think that's about all I've got.
Thank you, Sue.
At the moment. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mary Beth.
Hi there. I also want to echo my thanks and my appreciation for all of your hard work on this project. It's been so nice to know that our feedback is, with each iteration I see that our feedback is being taken into consideration. So thank you very much. One thought I have on the 109, the Com Ave, the mini wall that you're talking about, I think that is a great idea, but I just envision that if it's a flat surface, it's going to become a balance beam for children to climb up and walk on, and potentially, have a really good view into those windows. So perhaps it could be some sort of something done on an angle that would just prohibit, little ones from climbing up on top of. That still might look nice or might have a nice feeling to it, but they wouldn't be able to climb on top of. So that might be an answer there. And I have a couple questions from our teachers who are John Winthrop School teachers who have been listening. One is in terms of the sensory play area, it sounds like there's going to be mulch there, and I know that there's going to be a desk that I believe on one of the images, it had a funnel and some other, equipment maybe that could be used, but I'm just not sure what the kids are going to do with what they're going to be doing, what the purpose of the play will be without sand. So just wondering if kind of you could maybe focus a little bit more on that sensory play space.
Sure.
Do you want to go back to that slide, Cassie?
Oh, sure. Show the equipment.
Yep, there it is. So what some of these, that one is basically a scoop. So I know my daughter is always digging, and so the mulch, unfortunately we can't have sand, but what we can still do is allow the kids to kind of dig through the mulch. And then the black piece you see on that is a spinner. So as you dump the mulch or you pour that, that's going to interact with the material you're pouring on it. So that's the intent of what this piece is allowing them to have a little bit more structure, a little bit more program play with that mulch.
Okay, I like it. Okay. I thought that was a funnel for some reason, so that makes sense. Yep. And then there'll be more of the sensory logs and the stumps, okay, in the house. Got it. That sounds good. had spent a good amount of time looking at the differences. I know it's been a big debate in our school between the Richter and the comp fan. But I'm wondering if Cassie and Nathan, if you have a preference, or what you've seen in terms of what has been successful at other parks, or if you just have if you had to choose, what would be your, given now that I do appreciate the fact that we could kind of go in. I've seen some of the massive order forms that they have where you could pretty much order anything under the sun in terms of the accessories. But do you have a preference either way?
I want whatever the community wants. Is that too cheesy of an answer? No, but in all seriousness, I think it does need to be catered to the specific needs of the community. I know you guys mentioned the element of monkey bars is really important. That's a rite of passage for kids at this park. So that's an element we're going to want to preserve. And so we need to look and see, what the monkey bars are, the options for each of them are, and compare them and make sure that we're giving you what you want. Because if one of them doesn't meet kind of the existing type of play, then obviously we'll want to avoid that so that we can ensure it's checking the boxes for what happens in this specific park, not just in general. With that being said, I personally don't have a preference towards either one of them. It may be that my daughter's into fairies and stuff right now, so I lean towards the Compan one, just because I think it looks like some of the fairy houses she plays with, but that's just a one-off type comment. Cassie, do you have any preference?
I don't. I feel really comfortable with both companies and wouldn't show you anything that I don't feel 100% and stand behind. So either way, I think it's gonna be a great success.
That's what I should have said. She stole what
I figured. No, that's
right.
presented it to our teachers. So okay, great. And then one question we have is just the number of swings. Is it consistent with what we have now? So is it 4 total, including and then with the addition of the bucket swing?
Cassie, do you want to go back to the plan?
Yeah.
I believe. Sorry,
it's bath time in my house and it's a little hectic and I wanted to be on mute for a second there. First, for what we have currently, I believe there's a bay of 2 swings and then an entire swing that's no longer there. And then there's toddler swings in the front, like Sue was just mentioning. So we would not be eliminating the number, but we might even be adding 1 extra.
Great.
But again, the one thing to consider of that is obviously what we're graphically showing on this slide here is the Compan duo swing that's shown there. That puts 2 kids on what traditionally would have been just 1 swing. Mm-hmm. So it can be used by a single kid or it can be used by 2 kids. So it's actually doubling the occupancy that can be used in that space.
Yeah, I think it could be great.
And then I just saw Sue made a comment about toddler swings. We are including toddler swings as well. And then there's a comment about if we're considering metal playground equipment. So a lot of times they're more of like a hybrid approach where they're metal and wood. That's one of the things we got for early feedback on this is the desire to have a lot of natural materials. So that's why we were looking into the wood as an option here.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's looking great.
Okay. Any more hands up?
I don't see any.
All right. Cassie, do you want to go back to the plan? All right, so just looking at this, it sounds like we're going to continue to incorporate the feedback. What we're going to, and to kind of go back to the early slide that we showed in terms of a timeline, Cassie and her team, Cassie and Sherry, is going to work to continue to develop this plan, incorporate some of the feedback we got tonight. And what we'll be looking to do again is go out to bid in this coming winter so that we can try and have the least disruption to the school year in the amount of schools that use this park. So that's our schedule as it stands right now. Without seeing any other questions coming up, I think we can maybe close a little bit early. Enjoy the fact that it's still sunny out, well, sort of sunny out in a beautiful day. I do also want to point out that earlier Councillor Bach posted her contact information. We also have Lauren Brody from her office here. So again, if there are any other bigger issues, they're great. Thank you, Lauren. If there are any other neighborhood issues, concerns, or anything, don't hesitate to reach out to her office.
Yeah,
and with,
Sue just chatted a question
oh, good, great.
about seeing future plans.
So we don't typically, once what we typically do from here on out is we try and continue to get into the construction documents and ensure that it's meeting the character of what this plan is. Obviously, things will push and pull a little bit as we're starting to actually put this into that construction document modes, but we usually don't come back at that point. We ensure that if we make any large deviations from that, so if we all of a sudden run into an issue that we can't ensure that the intent of this design, we would come back at that point. But typically we don't for the next iterations.
I will say though, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, Nate, but one thing that I really want to tap into with the working group is your institutional knowledge, particularly around the planting success. So I know I have Margaret's number and the Sue's, so I will definitely be tapping you all to get your weighing in on the planting selections that we go with.
Yes, that's absolutely, especially since we have such an active friends group here. Those fine level details we're certainly going to be coordinating with you guys, especially since we rely on you guys to do a lot of the maintenance of those plants. So we want to make sure we're all on the same page with that.
Bob has his hand up.
Oh, great. Are you able to unmute them?
Rob, you can unmute yourself.
Hello. I just one request in terms of the working group. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with who is on the group, and I don't believe there's any representative for 109 in the working group, and that may be advantageous.
Sure. Primarily what the working group has functioned as is the schools in the friends group here. And a lot of that is focused on the type of play equipment and the use of the play. I've been trying to make sure I speak to the 109 trustees and incorporate all of the feedback that they get. So that was kind of the dual approach we were taking on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also serve as a trustee, so I don't want to end on a negative note, but I think that most of the residents of 109 were late to this because they weren't part of the original discussion, and it would just be more collaboratively handled if we were participating in it. I mean, I think for the most part, everybody is very impressed and positive. And, again, it's obviously we're the greatest area impacted from a day-to-day standpoint.
For sure. And I'll be sure to keep you guys posted going forward.
Thank you.
We have another question. How many can fit on the basket swing in the spinner?
It's a good question. Are you talking what the manufacturer designs or how many kids actually get on that? Because that's two
Right.
very different things.
My kids have been part of a attempt at a Guinness Book of World Records, not really, party on one of those swings.
Cassie, are you able to, do you know that off the top of your head?
I want to say it's like 4 kids, 4 to 6. That's what the manufacturer recommends, but like Sherry said, it's like 8.
For sure, especially if it's like a whole bunch of 4-year-olds, you can actually cram a lot of 4-year-olds onto one of those. Not that I recommend that.
And for the spinner too, the one nice thing about that is not only is it the kids on the spinner, but it's the kids interacting around it. So my daughter personally hates being on a spinner. She loves to make me sit on the spinner and then spin me, which is the worst. But that's how she interacts with it. So even if you have 3 or 4 kids on the spinner, you're most likely going to have 2 or 3 on the perimeter, you know, getting them going around. So yeah.
Margaret.
Margaret's hand up.
I just want to say that I think it's really important that we include the residents of 109 in this discussion as we go forward. And I think Mr. Feldman's points are very well taken, and that we need to maybe have a more structured relationship with them than just telling them sort of how this is progressing, because I think there are a lot of options in dealing with that 109 facade that we really need to work with them on that. And so I just would suggest that maybe we be more formal in how they're included than they are at this point. I know we had trouble finding Mel Barkin, but we finally did find Mel Barkin. So going forward, I think though we really need to talk to them more, not less.
Certainly. And I think one thing to build on that too is, and I know per Robert's comment earlier about potentially some sort of tree or something along the edge of their property. We would definitely be coordinating that with them to ensure that that's in line with what will literally be right outside their window. So we'll make sure that that is coordinated and everybody's in agreement on that as well.
Good, thank you.
We have a question again about the spinner.
Yep.
And how kids hold on. So and the basket swing. So in the basket swing, it's like it has the rope connections to the top bar. So kids hold on that way and can also hold on to the basket itself. And then with the spinner, it has like a rounded edge to it. And so kids can grab on that way. That's really the main way and it's also, it's angled up. So it almost like cups kids. And
it's also the surface inside the spinner is like a rubberized surfacing. So it's like there's high friction.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I do want to ask, do we have some of the original mothers from, I did a deep dive into the history of this site. So I'm very excited and eager to see, do we have, I believe I saw Prindle in the original story. I think it was Paul Prindle. Is that correct? Any other mothers?
I have both of my kids and my husband there.
And you did wash the kids afterwards? Because the story is the kids weren't washed, right?
That was when Barney Frank was working for the mayor. He did a little working for us on that.
That's awesome. That was a fun history. And then I also read about the Cabots that lived in 109 and just dropping history points, potentially the first actual motorized flight in America, not the Wright brothers, but from the Cabots right here in Massachusetts. So that's kind of a neat. And one of the things we talked about doing is, the stones that we have scattered throughout the site. Is there the possibility that we could start to take some of these other, local historical events and incorporate those as well? So that's maybe we could find what the picket signs, because did you actually have a picket sign when you went to the mayor?
No.
No. Okay.
We weren't that organized.
Well, you had dirty kids. That was enough to get the job done.
Yeah.
So, but I think we can still build and try and incorporate some of those features, potentially getting either stone printing or metal engraving with some of the images and the buildings that we showed earlier. I think it's, when you look at that site, it looks like it's always been a park. Right? You think, Com Ave's always been there and Clarendon's always been there right beside it because it has such beautiful mature trees. And if I think incorporating some of that history and showing kids that, no, there was a large building here would actually be kind of a neat element. Yeah. All right, so I don't see any other questions unless there's any last minute hand raising or.
There's
I
a
don't-
last minute question.
Oh, okay.
Will we be keeping all the plaques on the wall?
Yes, we will be ensuring the plaques remain.
Well,
Great.
I want to thank everyone for really kind of continuing along with us in this process, because that's what it is. It's an evolving iterative process that we're going through to come to the right design for everyone here and for all the kids that use the space. So thank you, everyone. And we are sure to be in touch with how things are evolving and come back with questions and things on details. So be ready.
Sure. So this meeting will be posted to the project page. So if you had any friends, neighbors, or colleagues that could not make it tonight, be sure to direct them to that page where they can see a recording on that page, as well as what we showed earlier is my contact information. So you can certainly feel free to send me an email, and I'll make sure all of those comments are incorporated in the meeting notes as well. With that said, everybody have a great evening. I appreciate it, all the input.